We see here Akira Kurosawa, the Japanese director of the film Rashomon, made in 1950. He is considered by many to be one of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century.
そうじゃなくて、本当に日本人として日本人の問題を一生懸命ただ言えばね、やっぱり同じ人間なんだから各国同じ問題抱えてるわけですからね、だからそれがやっぱり一番いいんじゃないですか、その
The time I spent with Kurosawa has been reflected in my own work, as all the time I spent with Kurosawa's films have done so much to inspire me to be a better filmmaker.
Rashomon is the most interesting, for me, of Kurosawa's films. That and The Throne of Blood, those two stand out the most.
The opening shot shows Rashomon, the gate to Kyoto, the then imperial city ruined by warfare. The story of the film takes place in the 8th century.
That rain, I love that rain. Rain is a real emotional trigger that works in any film because it gives you another blanket, so to speak. It gives you another layer that the audience can relate to sensually. I mean, to me, every element of that film was part of that film, part of the poem.
In short, the film depicts an alleged rape of a woman in the woods and the death of her samurai husband. The two other attendees at the scene of the crime are Tayomaru, the bandit, and a woodcutter hidden in the bush. At the court trial, the testimonies of the suspects are mutually contradictory and seem strongly motivated by factors of self-interest and saving face. For instance, the bandit claims that he has killed the samurai with his sword. While the samurai, speaking through a medium from the grave, states that he committed suicide with the precious dagger of his wife. In movie jargon, the film's title, Rashomon, has become synonymous with its chief narrative conceit, a story told multiple times from various points of view. The end of the film, the climax, is set at the gate, where the woodcutter, priest and commoner, or vagabond, are interrupted from their discussion of the woodcutter's account by the sound of a crying baby. Unfortunately, the 8-minute end of the film cannot be shown due to a worldwide copyright claim, so I'll give a brief summary. The woodcutter has just told his version of the happenings in the wood, but the vagabond doesn't believe him. All the deceptions and lies at the trial have shaken the priest's faith in humanity. Then the men hear a baby crying. The vagabond finds the baby and takes a kimono and an amulet that have been left for the baby. The woodcutter attacks the vagabond for stealing from the abandoned baby. However, the vagabond has deduced that the reason the woodcutter didn't speak up at the trial was because he was the one who stole the precious dagger from the scene of the crime. He chastises the woodcutter and mocks him as a bandit calling another a bandit. Then he leaves Rashomon with the kimono and the amulet, claiming that all men are motivated only by self-interest. It stops raining. The woodcutter reaches for the baby in the priest's arms, but the priest refuses at first. The woodcutter explains that he intends to take care of the baby along with his own 6 children. The priest then gives the baby to the woodcutter, saying that the latter has given him reason to continue having hope in humanity. The film closes on the woodcutter walking home in the sun with the baby in his arms. Now follow 5 interpretations of the film's ending. In a certain sense, the Rashomon effect is present in the discussions. The 5 interpreters have seen the same film, the cinematographic reality, but come to dissimilar opinions.
But let me end by talking about the ending, because the ending of Rashomon presents us with a problem similar to the problem that we confronted in a film like The Last Laugh, Der letzte Mann, in which there seems to be a kind of optimistic or reassuring ending to this film. The film has been very dark and rainy, and in fact, one of the ways you can tell that the film has changed registers is that the rain finally disappears. Well, as you're watching the ending, which is quite explicit, even heavy-handed, about its attempt to return us to a sort of more hopeful view of mankind, you should ask yourself, does it deserve to be deleted? All through the 40s, when Kurosawa was first learning his trade, he began to direct early in the 40s, and he directed this film in 1950 is his first real masterwork. He'd become more and more confident and ambitious as a director during this period, but he hadn't sort of displayed his full capacities as a director until this point. Most accounts of his career suggest. But during this period in the 1940s, Kurosawa took upon himself what he regarded as a social project, which was to try to help renovate Japan after the devastations of the war. And his films of the 40s almost always tried to suggest various forms of, various ways in which people could behave decently and heroically, if not heroically, at least decently, in an effort to sort of renovate and reconstitute a damaged society, a broken society. One of the reasons that the breakdown of ancient Japan is so powerful in Rashomon is that no question that Kurosawa and his cast believed that in some sense there was a symbolic analogy to be made between conditions in Japan, in the actual Japan in the 1940s and early 50s, and the broken, terrifying conditions of society in the 11th and 12th centuries, in the past parable that the narrative is telling us. And so, and this film continues that tradition. But I think many viewers, I among them, have the feeling that this is more wish fulfillment on Kurosawa's part than reality. And one could say from an artistic standpoint then, one might conclude that it's a weakness in the film. I think I might say that the film might be more powerful, more truthful to itself, that it may, that the ending that's tacked on may undermine its deepest energies in disturbing ways. So it's another example in which commercial and social imperatives may be interfering with the artistic integrity of the text. But it's significant, important to understand that this was a tendency that was present in Kurosawa's work all the way through the 40s, and that therefore it's a kind of expression of a moral sense that the director had that begins to become less powerful after Rashomon, and although he remains a deeply moral director. So the ending is a question, and you might want to ask yourself how you would react, how you would respond to the question of the relevance of the ending to the rest of the film.
At the end of the film, nobody really knows what happened as far as the facts of the event. If you think after watching it 1 time or 2 times or 3 times that you figured out what really happened, watch it again. Right, no. Kurosawa was once asked You know, if you watch Rashomon enough times, if you watch it carefully enough, can you really figure out what happened? And he just burst into laughter. He said, well, probably the samurai's really dead. That's it. You know, you do not know what happened, and it's meant to be that way. You don't know. You can't figure out what really happened. Okay? The problem of truth doesn't get solved. What the woodcutter does solve is the moral problem. What do I do? I have the capacity for good. I have the capacity for evil. I know I'm capable of doing good. I know I'm capable of doing evil. What do I do? I just accept who I am, and I step up to the plate, and I do the right thing. Okay? In the end, he takes that, you know, without emphasizing the moral dimension, there's no explanation for the ending of the film, okay? And many Western critics have sat back and said, well, what is this ending supposed to be? That just looks like it's tacked on for no reason. No, it is absolutely at the core of the moral dimension. I am not perfectly good, and I'm not perfectly evil, so what do I do in the present situation? Kurosawa's answer to the question, what do we do in the present situation, muddled as it is always the same. If we are capable of caring about each other, there is still hope. There's still a way to go on. When the woodcutter takes the baby and offers to take it home and raise it with his own 6 kids, poor as he is, he's not suddenly transformed into a saint. He's still the same guy, but the same guy, an imperfect, flawed human being, is capable of doing good, is capable of having compassion, is capable of doing the right thing. That is why the priest then bows to him and says, I think you have restored my faith in humanity. Not because the priest now believes that this woodcutter is saintly, but because it's like, you know, actually you don't have to be saintly. You can be a real, warts and all human being and nevertheless still be capable of good, still be capable of caring. As long as we're able to care about each other, there is hope for the future. Kurosawa was a big fan of American Westerns, both because of their absolutely simplistic morality. The good guy's wearing white, the bad guy's wearing black. The good guy overcomes the bad guy and then rides off into the sunset. You know, the setting sun, the sun setting in the west is a very universal symbol for the journey is over, the day is done, the work is complete. Okay? In Chinese and Japanese Buddhism, they sometimes talk about the Western paradise. Okay? At the end of Rashomon, Kurosawa has flipped that over. The woodcutter walks out, not off into the sunset, walks out into the sunrise, walks toward the sun, into illumination. Because, you know, the day is not over, the sun's not setting, the sun's rising, the work's not done, but we are able to go on. We are able to live another day. We are able to continue. We don't have to give up on ourselves or on each other. Very amazing. I love the way, I'm sure it's unintentional, but I love the way that parallels Plato's cave, you know, coming out into the light. I don't have to remain in the darkness. I can actually come out into the light and be illuminated. Kurosawa is making this film in the 1950s. It's not that long since World War II was over. Imagine you're a Japanese living in Japan in that time period. What's life like? Your traditional society is gone forever. The thing that defined what it is to be Japanese and who you are as a Japanese is gone. The people you thought were the barbarians are here, and they are trying to dismantle your society and reconstruct you in their own image. You don't even know in a generation what it will mean to be Japanese. And they're telling you that you brought this all on yourself because of all the evil things you did, and yet you know perfectly well they did all kinds of evil things too. Yeah, but you're invading these other countries. Hey, you know, we were explicitly imitating British imperialism. We're a small island nation. You know, we're either going to be a world power or be dominated by world powers. What are we going to do? We're going to do what the British did. We're going to acquire colonies abroad. And in fact, if you look at the documents at the time, that was explicitly the plan. We're going to imitate British imperialism because that was a very successful model as far as they were concerned. And we're going to acquire those colonies the same way the British did. We're going to send guns. Okay? And here we are acting like we don't know anything about this. Oh, you can't do that. That's wrong. Why? Because it's threatening our national interests or our economic interests? The whole thing becomes a complete tangled mess where everybody's got dirty hands. So you're sitting there in Japan and you're like this poor woodcutter. The good guys and the bad guys seem to be, the bad guys seem to be good guys, the good guys seem to be bad guys. Everybody seems to be confused. Everybody seems to be capable of both good and evil. You can't just simply take a dualistic approach and say, here are the forces of good and here are the forces of evil. Human existence is a mixed bag. So what do you do in this situation of chaos, in this situation where you can not be sure of too much? What you do is you step up to the plate and you say, we are still capable of caring about one another. We are still capable of compassion. We are still capable of humane action. And as long as we can still do that, there is still hope for the future and we can still go on another day.
The catharsis which the film provides is not through escapism, but by staring straight into a world stripped of everything, to recognize that humans are, as Hobbes described them. Yet then, as Hobbes described, writing after another great shattering event, the English Civil War, which had stripped his generation, like the Japanese, of their leader and of all inherited trust, people can build up a world of hope, meaning and beauty from the rubble. It starts with a very small gesture, the taking of a baby, the moment of genuine trust. And from that moment, all is possible. So in the story of Rashomon, there are many things yet to understand, as the woodcutter no doubt would have said. Yet one thing is certain. Looking back over the last half-century or more since the release of the film, we can see that hope does indeed spring eternal. Out of the devastation of post-war Japan, there did arise trust, some certainties, and a wealthy and stable society. The baby lived. The gatehouse was rebuilt. Whether this vindicates Western optimism or is just another deceptive lull in the midst of the storm, we shall no doubt see.
The artist in Kurosawa, the entire film takes place, present time, in rain.
Yeah.
But the end,
It dries away.
it dries up.
Yeah.
And the end is the hope, the child. The child just comes.
Yeah, I know.
There is nothing to do with the story. But the child designates hope. So he leaves the film with hope, and the priest also says that you renew my hope for mankind and lets the man take,
Walk away. With
because the man is also the thief.
Yeah.
He is the person who has stolen the dagger.
Yeah.
He is the person, and you don't know what the real story is.
In the end, this cynicism, this nihilism, is disproved when a man decides to raise an abandoned child, a selfless act. One could argue that he's only doing this out of guilt for originally not wanting to testify about what he saw, but his guilt alone disproves the idea that there are no good men as well. So long as there is conscious thought in the universe that chooses to live, we are tacitly admitting to the value of existence. And if we value existence, we have to protect it. Anyway, trying to piece together what really happened is pointless because the film can claim no true explanation based on its own framework. Everything we are seeing is in the mind of the witness. We are never watching objective reality during the flashbacks. We are seeing subjective reality, memories and lies. Only these scenes at the gate are objective reality. Well, outside the artifice of film, of course. We could guess that the final interpretation is the most likely one, and that's sensible enough, but the film purposefully makes any concrete explanation impossible. Any certainty is uncertain. Kurosawa once said that Rashomon is a reflection of life, and that life does not have a clear meaning.